my biggest prayer is always for clarity on what's the next step and why are you making this business work for me? Like, why do you keep opening doors? What is this purpose? Like, help me to see that purpose of this business. And so like, yeah, just, I think God honestly provides an internal motivation. I love what I do. You know, I love working at home. I love being challenged. Like, you know, that's one of my biggest things. I love learning. Yeah. So I'm continually growing and learning. And so I think those are kind of my motivating factors. Sure. But just continually, you know, I start every day before I open that computer. My Bible's right on top of the computer. Yeah. And it's just a quick, you know, prayer and like, just give me the guidance for today. Give me the, you know, where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to be doing with this?
Wow. This is the Made to Advance podcast. I'm your host, Brian Aulick. We're here to inspire and equip you for your best future. Well, I'm so excited about our guest today because Kirsten Field is not just an incredible entrepreneur, but she's also one of Christina's and my very close friends. She's married to Brian, she has 3 kids, and she is the founder and leader of Kids Crafts. Kirsten, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so fun to be here, and I'm so excited.
Yeah, well, it's funny booking you. You know, turned out you're a big timer because the way we do our booking for the audience right now is we have all of these dates that we are like our recording dates,
right? And
then when we reach out to you to see if you can be a guest, you can pick your option.
Yeah.
And I think when we reached out, you picked a date that was like four months out.
I'm
like, wow, okay, we got a baller in the house, everybody.
I wanted to get a lay of the land. I wanted to listen to some of the podcasts, see what you guys are doing. So yeah.
Well, if you showed up in a black SUV with tinted windows and a bodyguard, I was going to be like, Kirsten, we need to have a talk. This
totally.
It's too much. But no, I'm just glad that you're here. And,
yeah, thanks.
And I'm looking forward to hanging because we get to hang out in the summer quite often, and you guys have a beautiful place to hang out. So hopefully we'll have some good memories coming as couples this summer. But
absolutely,
you have got such a cool journey, and I know I said a long time ago that I wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity for you to tell your story on our podcast because I think this is going to encourage a whole lot of people. So maybe what we could start with is you're leading Kids Crafts right now. It's not your first business. You've led other things, but maybe you can back up and just give a little bit of the story that led up to what you're doing today.
Yeah, absolutely. So to give you a little background, graduated from Hope College, go Hope, and went straight into consulting. So I worked for like Accenture and Deloitte & Touche and places like that. And when we started to have kids, my husband, Brian, and I decided, you know what, it would be awesome if I could stay home with them. And so we really made that a priority in our life, in our marriage, and raising our kids, that I would stay home and raise them. And so I ended up staying home for about 10 years, and it wasn't easy for me. Like, I wouldn't say like I was the unnatural like stay-at-home mom.
Yeah. What wasn't easy about it? Was it just you loved doing stuff, or was it?
I think I'm just driven. Like and not that being a stay-at-home mom isn't. No, I mean, that's the ultimate driving force, right? But like, it just was tricky because I kept feeling like year after year. You know, I'm in a consulting business. Like, how am I going to stay relevant? Like, things are changing constantly in software and technology. And so how am I even going to break back into that market? And Brian just kept saying, Kirsten, there's a plan. Like, God has a plan. This is where we're supposed to be right now. This is the most important thing we can be doing for our kids right now. It's going to all work out. And he just kept saying, it's going to all work out. And so
Brian is like the eternal optimist. So
always.
Great to have that voice in your corner. So
so fast forward 10 years of staying at home with them and still, PTOing and doing all those mom things. And I actually volunteered at the Santa's workshop at the local elementary school. And
tell us what Santa's worship. You can tell I'm a pastor. Santa's workshop is, share that with us.
Okay, so Santa's Workshop is probably the same thing that like we grew up with back in the day, where, a company will come in, the PTO runs it, but they supply all this, chintzy stuff that you could probably get at the dollar store.
Yeah.
And, they price it really high. And so I was watching the whole scene play out. I'm helping the kids shop, and, I'm taking their money, and, and I'm looking at the quality of the stuff. It's all the I love dad mugs, and,
Right.
The earrings that turn mom's ears green and all that stuff. And I'm thinking, seriously, like, this is what I grew up with. Like, isn't there something better out there? And it really just gave me the idea that what if I created a company where kids could make gifts for mom or dad instead of buy them? And so, and the other thing, I guess, with the Santa's Workshop is that I didn't like the fact that kids that didn't have the money couldn't come down and shop. Like, I felt like that's super, exclusive or whatever, or, that they can't allow them to come. And
Right.
so I wanted to create something new, and that's how Elf Factory started.
Okay.
So
and that's your first business was Elf Factory.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. So it was Elf Factory, and I developed the idea to create 10 different crafts that kids could create, and they would come down and create all of their crafts. That we would package them up, and even if you didn't have money, you could come down and make the free item as well. And that's how the whole business started.
Wow.
And so I was never like looking to become an entrepreneur. I never, that wasn't my dream, going to college, and so that's kind of how it started. And so
The key thing I want to jump in on there is that I love you saw a need, you saw something could be done better.
Yeah.
And you said, what if that was me that fixed,
Right.
fixed that problem or improved that process?
Right.
And that really is what gave birth to the whole thing. Now, when you knew, what you did to make this happen is crazy. So just talk about some of the practical things that you did. I mean, you've never done anything like this before.
Right.
So give us an example of a few things that you did that were new for you, and don't forget China and whatever you do, because I think that's so fascinating.
China comes later.
Okay.
So I would say maybe let's pause on that part, because it really does come a little bit later in the whole process. I would say what happened with Elf Factory is I came up with this idea, and I started to think about, okay, well, how am I going to make this actually work? And so I developed some crafts, I started to source the products, but again, this was at a really minimal level of like maybe having one or two schools. Like I was going to the PTO meetings and pitching the ideas.
Yeah.
And so it was something, right? And a friend of mine said, oh, you know what you should do? You should apply for Start Garden. Start Garden will, they have these nights where they will award cash, and they'll give you $5,000. And I think that they did it, I think it was monthly. There was like a monthly $5,000 prize you could win. And so I applied for the Start Garden money, and they actually funded me at the $5,000 level.
Cool.
And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Like, this is the start I need. And actually, I really do attribute Start Garden to really launching the journey. That $5,000 as a stay-at-home mom, living on one income was huge.
Yeah.
And it afforded me, the opportunity to get a laptop. And Start Garden also gave you all of these tools in terms of like legal advice. If you're working with Start Garden, you get, your LLC started, and just marketing things. They were bringing in speakers nonstop that, and I was just devouring the information that they were saying. So I would go to all of their lectures and, podcasts and things that they would have set up. I guess they didn't have podcasts back then, but all of their different, workshops that they would have coming on. And so part of taking that money at the $5,000 level was your responsibility is to come back 6 months later and present at update night. And then you go in front of a panel of, it's Mike Morin and Rick DeVos and a few other people who were part of the team at that point. You go in front of them, you pitch it, there's people from all over Grand Rapids standing there watching you pitch. And
were you crazy nervous or not really?
Yes.
Okay.
Like I'm coming out of being a mom for 10 years. Like my presentation skills are not up to date at that point, but super nervous. I pitch it. And at that point they decide whether they're going to fund you at the $20,000 level or just say, you know what, we love your idea. We wish you the best of luck. Keep the $5,000. Well, they ended up funding me at the $20,000 level.
Wow.
And I remember like a key thing as they were going through like, yep, we're going to fund you. But Rick DeVos said, you're going to have to figure out a way to sell these things beyond just the holidays. And he's like, this model is great in a sense, but like it has to have a longer stability period, it can't just be holidays. So I was like, okay, I don't know what that means right now, but okay, I'll do that. And so fast forward like 3 weeks later, we were in Detroit and we went to one of those Bass Pro Shops.
Yep.
And we walked in with the kids and they had kind of like one of those make and take craft center set up where you can, have your kids make the craft while you shop. And they were coloring on this like wood sign that just said Bass Pro Shop. And that was the craft. And I thought, I feel like I could do this better. Uh-huh. And I literally went home. That was on a Sunday. Monday, I was at Start Garden. Listening to one of their workshops, and then I was just working in their, shared space. And I was like, I'm going to look up who the marketing people are at Bass Pro Shop, and I'm going to LinkedIn message them. And I did. Yeah. Friday, I got a call from her, and she said, we're interested in hearing what you have to pitch. Get me a proposal by Monday. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what to pitch to them. Like, I'm just supplying 500 crafts to a school. Like, I don't even know what to do. Yeah. And that is really where the whole journey started. Okay. And I would say that, like, I think what we've talked about in the past is God has just continually opened doors for me that have felt like there's no other way it could be other than God. Like, there's just no other way.
Yeah, and I love for people who are listening right now, you didn't come in with this master plan that was just, I've got the 5-year and all the financials worked out, any of that stuff. No. You didn't even have the idea until you were getting that money. Hey, maybe this could be more than just like the holidays. Yes. And even then, I love, of course, your theme of like, I see a need and maybe I can improve or do something better. Right. But then it wasn't real fancy. You reach out on LinkedIn and here you are. And you end up landing a national level account. Yes.
So that first year, she ordered, I think, 30,000 Halloween crafts. Okay. And so I was like, oh my gosh. So that catapulted me into an entirely new arena of trying to figure out sourcing in China, shipping in China, and sea freight and all of it. And that's really where the business completely grew and blew up. So that was around 2013 is when it started. Fast forward a few years, I was kind of doing some stuff for Bass Pro Shop. I was trying to make the school thing work. But again, just as I said, God keeps opening doors, God was shutting doors for me too. And the school thing was just not taking off like how I had anticipated. I probably went to 12 PTO conferences across the nation that year because I was like, I'm going to do this. Like, let's get out there. Like, if there's a need, like, this is going to tell me, like, do people want this or not? And doors just kept shutting on it. I mean, it just didn't take off. And I was like, okay, I think I'm going to say goodbye to the elf factory part of this business and just kind of lean into the Bass Pro Shop stuff. But the kids had gone to school by that point. And so I was just staying at home doing the stuff for Bass Pro Shop. And I was like, I kind of have some extra capacity here. And a friend of ours was looking for an HR consultant. And I said, I could do that. Like, it's remote. I'll work from home. I could do that and the business. It'll be great. And so I ended up doing that as well. So 2015 to 2018, I was working as an HR consultant and also doing the Bass Pro Shop stuff. And during that time was when things just went really haywire for me.
Explain that.
Yeah. So I worked for one of our best friends, and I think, people always say, don't mix, don't mix friendship things. And we were one of the odd pairs that actually really worked well together. But I think internally, I just did not want to fail for him. Mm-hmm. I wanted to overachieve. I wanted to ensure that I was pushing his business to the best place it could be. And what that ended up doing was just like destroying my body. Mm-hmm. And I didn't realize it at the time. I was under so much stress, and not from him at all. Right. It literally was all self-imposed stress on trying to manage the Bass Pro Shop expectations, which were extremely high. And then also, holding myself to my own standards of not wanting to disappoint a friend and wanting their business to really succeed.
How many hours were you putting into, you suppose, during this time?
Well, 40 hours a week for the one job. And then with Bass Pro Shop, probably another 20, 25 a week.
Okay, so some long weeks,
was a lot.
Big weeks. Yeah. And lots of them in succession too.
Yeah. And I think I just didn't realize, I think when you're in it, you don't realize the stress you're under, right? Had I realized it, obviously, I think things would have been different. But what came out of that is I had developed burning tongue syndrome, which is awfully painful and horrible. I started losing my hair. I had hives all over my body every day. I was highly anxious, to the point that we would come to church and I would sit in the back because I just didn't know if I could make it through the service. And, and every night I would go to bed and just say, God, please, please make this go away. Just heal me, heal me right now. Please heal me. I don't understand. I can't be a good mom to my kids. I can't be a good wife to my husband. The only thing I'm succeeding in right now is work, because both are going well. I'm not going to let them fail, but something's got to give. And I just wasn't realizing it. And the symptoms, I think, just kept manifesting because I just kept worrying more and more. So it was like this vicious cycle of you can't get off the wheel. It just keeps spiraling to the point that I ended up at Mayo. And Mayo is an incredible facility. Hopefully you don't ever have to go there, but it is amazing. And their team was able to run a zillion different tests on me.
But the crazy thing was, you get to Mayo.
I get to Mayo,
and
my hives are gone.
Yeah. So,
which is shocking.
This is the biggest reason that got you there was the hives were so out of control.
The hives were
and obviously
so
a lot
out
of other
control.
things going on. But you get there, it all disappears.
Yes. The hives were, I was on probably 12 pills a day for the hives to be under control. I looked like a burn victim. They were everywhere all the time. And just to keep them at bay was a zillion pills just to, the antihistamine to keep the histamine down. I got to Mayo, and literally that night they were gone. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Really? This is how it's going to be? Yeah. And so Mayo, ran the tests, and they're like, you had hives. And I was like, I swear, we have pictures. I'm documented everything, And at the end of it all, they said, this is stress. Stress is killing you. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, it can't be. This physical stuff that's happening to me really cannot be stress. I never would have thought, if it didn't happen to me, that could happen to someone. And so we ended up going out to dinner, my husband and I, that night. And he's like, okay, so what's going to change? We got to change something. You either have to quit your job with Ty, or you need to quit the business, the Elf Factory stuff at Kids Crafts. And I said, well, I think I need to then quit Ty's job. So that we got back that next day. I called him up and I said, hey, we need to have a talk. And I think he knew it was coming just because of all the health things I was going through. But I said, can you meet me over at this restaurant? And he's like, yeah, no problem. I'll meet you over there. And so I drive there. I get there before him, and the restaurant happened to be closed. And so I called him. I'm like, the restaurant's closed. Let's go meet at, Ottawa Beach Inn and get a drink there or something and talk through stuff. And as I'm pulling out, there's no cars in the parking lot at this place. And as I'm pulling out, literally a car pulls right in front of me, and their license plate said "Believe." Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And to this day, it's my biggest, when I think in my head, God, what are you doing right now? Yeah. What are you doing right now? It's that visual picture of that white car with that white license plate that said "Believe." And I just feel like it was such a confirmation where I had been praying and praying, God, just take this away. And had he done that, had he cured me right then, I would have kept pushing hard. I would not have learned the lesson. Right. It's all, hindsight's always 20/20, right? And so...
well, and one of the things about your story, and even with stepping away from the one job to really step into what is in some ways a riskier job. I mean, to run your company, and it's not this long established company, is you had a long-standing kind of internal issue with financial security.
Yes.
And so for you, it wasn't just stepping away from a job. There was a lot going on relative to stepping away from that stable paycheck too.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, growing up, I would say that finances were tricky at our house. And so I always have had a really, what would you call it? Security for me is having just enough money in the bank. I don't need to be a millionaire. I don't need to have X amount. I just need to have enough that things feel safe, right? And so there was a huge faith factor of stepping out and saying, well, I don't know if Bass Pro Shop's going to order next year, but I'm going to pursue this and I'm going to trust God. He's opened all these doors already for me. And it was a big faith leap. So
for the sake, I want to make sure we can get to some other things too. So we'll have to do a little, because it's so important and fun to get to kids crafts, which is what you're doing now. So maybe you could, there's so many great things that happened because the business kept prospering and did really well. And then COVID hit.
Yes.
And basically everything dried up.
Yes.
Essentially. Is that a good summary of the journey? I mean,
I would say, trusting in God, right? 2018 is when it all ended. 2019, I was only kids crafts, and he provided. The business went to $2 million overnight.
Kids crafts did?
Yes.
Okay, well, let's back up. Now you're okay. Let's back up a little bit, but because I wanted to, I guess, in some ways, starting out with Elf Factory. You're doing everything with Bass, and there were some other. I think you had some other places you were serving.
Yep.
But COVID is where you really had to. Everything dried up.
Right.
So you're at this place, and talk about the journey where you're like, okay, what do I do now? Talk about that journey. What really led up to Kids Crafts? Maybe you could navigate that a little bit.
Yeah. So. Okay. So Kids Crafts isn't a different business. The name actually just changed, right? So. 2019, things were going well. The business hit its biggest year ever, and then COVID hit. And the business dried up overnight. Yeah. And I was really forced with, how do I pivot this company? And so I was praying and thinking, okay, do I just dissolve the whole company right now? Or because the whole company's based on events, right? And Bass Pro Shop canceled everything. Right. Macy's canceled everything. All these big stores canceled everything. And so I was like, do I just dissolve it all? But my wheelhouse is crafts. I know how to mass produce things. I know how to ship things. And where do I go from here? And so I was praying. And I just felt like God's going to tell me something. He's going to tell me something, but it wasn't coming fast enough, right? I'm like, I feel it. I feel like there's something on the horizon, but I don't know what it is yet. And so I get COVID. I'm laying in bed for like 2 weeks. This is before the shots came out.
I just remember that time talking to Brian and feeling so bad for you because
I was so sick.
You get COVID worse than anybody I know.
I know.
I know.
Gosh. So I'm laying there thinking about my life, thinking about all this, and it hit me. And it was one of those aha moments. And so I was thinking, what is going to differentiate my dream catcher craft in the marketplace versus any other dream catcher that somebody could buy? Mm-hmm. And I came up with the idea of what if I theme these around mighty women that had dreams. Yeah. So instead of just creating a dream catcher, we tell a story about a mighty trailblazing woman.
Okay.
And then the girl can create a tangible keepsake item to remember that story of that woman. Yeah. And so that's how the whole new branded B2C business started. Yeah. And so I came up with 3 lines of crafts. The Lead Her collection is all about trailblazing women telling their stories, and then the girls create a tangible keepsake craft, and then we include a leader card because we're really targeting that tween market of 8 to 13-year-olds, and that can be a tricky time to talk to your kiddos about, like, hey, how are you using your voice for change, or how do you think you could be a trailblazer? What would you do in Rosa's shoes? Or, all of those kind of questions about really being a leader as a girl. So we have our leader collection, and then we have an Innovate Her collection, which is all about jumpstarting girls' first businesses. And that kind of grew out of my girls watching me, start Elf Factory and work with Bass Pro Shop. And I think inadvertently, it just was like, oh, mom's doing it, I can do it too. So whether it's like, collecting rocks and painting them and putting them at the end of the driveway or selling mint or whatever they're doing, they started all these different little businesses because I think that they saw it modeled, right? So I was like, how can I harness that modeling for other kiddos? Mm-hmm. And so we created the Innovate Her line, which is all about, jumpstarting the business. And so along with the materials to make keychains or pet tags or, paper clips, we include the packaging that they need to then create a finished product and sell it at the end of the driveway. And then we include a Mighty Girl business plan that walks them through the steps of how do you advertise, how do you create, how do you sell and cost and all of that good stuff.
So cool.
Yeah. And then the Create Her line is just kind of the catch-all for what we used to do. And so all of the felt crafts that we used to do still kind of have a high demand for littler kiddos and things like that.
What do you think since the pivot, and I remember you navigating those days, because that's just hard to watch your whole business, which was flourishing, dry up and go, what's next? But then watching the pivot, and then you've since had a lot of awesome opportunities to get the crafts out. What do you look back on, you think, since the pivot, this is one of the most satisfying, rewarding sides or aspects of the journey?
I would say seeing the crafts on the shelves at like a Meijer or Barnes & Noble is real fun. Or like Macy's. Somebody sent me a picture of Macy's during International Women's Day that they had them in their flagship store, in the window display. And I'm thinking, wow, that's really cool. Like, I actually did that. And that's really fun.
And the crazy thing is, when people see a product at a Macy's, or I think Barnes & Noble too, right? And Meijer's, it's been a Meijer, it's been Walmart, all these different places. And you imagine, wow, there's some big company doing all of this. Share with me how many paid employees you have on your staff.
Me.
And you
and me. But I will say I have so what I've learned over these few years is like hire out what you don't know, right? Yeah. Like there's gifts I have and there are definitely gifts I don't have. So, I say me, but, I hire out all of our accounting and bookkeeping, and I have an amazing graphic designer that works out of LA and is a stay-at-home mom, and she's on my team, but she doesn't specifically work for me. But
But that's what's so cool. And all of this is just you saying, I remember when you were first, trying to get some help with online stuff.
Yeah.
You're just researching, studying, making connections online. Didn't you have a designer once that was like in Italy or something?
Yep.
Am I remembering that right?
Yes. All of our illustrations are made by an illustrator out of Paris, France.
There it is, Paris. So, but you're just figuring it out.
Yeah.
It's not like you went to school for how do I do all this.
Right.
And you learn. You're such a grower. I just love that about you. You're always learning. You're always studying. And then you're taking risks and just making connections. And you've had some that have not worked. And
yes.
Maybe you could talk a little bit about, because I think of some things you've tried and you're like, yeah, maybe not that. Talk about a couple of times that you've tried something that hasn't worked.
A couple fails. Yeah, I would say, that's one of my biggest pieces of advice for people is like, don't be afraid to fail because you learn from every fail, right? Like I was really excited about this one company that I started to work with that was like hiring interns from like Stanford, Harvard, all these Ivy League schools that could freelance work for you. And that just ended up really being a disaster fail. And, there's been other challenges along the way. We've had containers. I had a Walmart container come that had been waterlogged. Like the entire shipment came moldy and wet.
With a tight timeline.
Yeah. So we had to recreate everything and ship it here by air. There's just some things where you're like, really? Like this is happening. But again, God always just shows up. We had a container that I dubbed the fire and ice container. It had such a tight timeline for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day launch. And it got caught in California because it came into California ports. It got caught because of their fire situation. Right. Finally got on the train through the fires, and then it hit an ice storm on the back end coming here. And I'm like,
goodness.
We literally turned the whole container around in one day to get it overnighted to all of the stores. Like it just was like things that should never have happened. God just opened doors, and by the skin of the teeth, it still just worked, and He still just made it happen. And so that's what's been so fun.
It's cool. And you're always so quick to give credit to where you just know God has shown up in your business. And I love that because you've seen Him show up in a whole lot of different ways.
Yeah.
I was thinking about some of these times where you've had surprises. Your family has been part of the team as well. Maybe you could talk about. They didn't know they were signing on maybe as a family for a full business, but maybe talk about a time when you had to lean into your fam for some support.
Oh my gosh, there's been lots of times where it's it seems like this big company, right? Where we're in big stores and we're in big retailers, but when it comes down to it, I'm like, you guys, I need help right now. Like we got to pack these orders. We got to ship them out. So they're big in helping me with the packing of them. I have a warehouse here in Holland that we operate out of, and they come and put labels on things for me. They, because those big orders, and that's another thing when you're an entrepreneur, it's all just about learning, right? So like every retailer has different shipping requirements. And so the labels all have to be different. And so they're always down to help and hire a lot of West Ottawa kids. I think Jared worked for me once.
Yeah, he did. He loved it too. He's such a give me the task and I'm just gonna. I know,
he was awesome. He was awesome. So
Jared was just on. I interviewed the owner of Chick-fil-A.
I heard
here,
that
and,
one.
Jared was. He came afterwards. He came up to me. He said, Dad, my name came up kind of a lot. That was weird. But I said, well, sorry, son. I mean,
in all good ways,
you did a good job.
Yes.
So what are you going to do? When you're going through the setbacks, and we've talked a lot about those, sometimes, you and Brian and Christina and I will be just hanging out and you'll have whatever difficulty might have come up. How do you find the internal strength to just keep going? Because you've had a bunch of these, and I suspect, I know enough entrepreneurs to know, I don't think feeling like you got your business handed to you is an unusual experience. But how do you, your doodle Teddy helps, I know. He's part of the package.
I do love Teddy.
Yeah, but how do you find the internal, where does that come from?
I just continually pray. Yeah. I think my biggest prayer is always for clarity on what's the next step and where why are you making this business work for me? Like, why do you keep opening doors? What is this purpose? Like, help me to see that purpose of this business. And so like, yeah, just, I think God honestly provides an internal motivation. I love what I do. You know, I love working at home. I love being challenged. Like, you know, that's one of my biggest things. I love learning.
Yeah.
So I'm continually growing and learning. And so I think those are kind of my motivating factors.
Sure.
But just continually, you know, I start every day before I open that computer. My Bible's right on top of the computer.
Yeah.
And it's just a quick, you know, prayer and like, just give me the guidance for today. Give me the, you know, where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to be doing with this?
Wow. So there really is a very real sense in which you can, you intentionally take steps to lean into God and say, I need your wisdom, power, all of that to help me basically function in the leader as the leader that I need to be. When it comes to navigating challenges and just staying excited, so there's the strength of getting through it, but staying passionate. Do you have to tell yourself to be passionate? Do you have to say yourself, this is why I'm doing it? Or is just doing the work, growing, learning, is that enough for you to keep you motivated and persevering?
Oh, that's a good question. You know, I think there are lonely days, right? For sure there's lonely days because I'm like a one woman show. You know, I've recently joined a mentorship group, which I'm really excited about because we're going to have kind of cohorts of people that we're working with that are, you know, in various different B2C businesses. Yeah. But I think just having that accountability excites me and also motivates me.
That makes sense. Yeah. When you think about the financial side of things and that journey that you've been on from the early days of having to really trust God to step away from the one business, do you feel like your journey with not letting finances kind of take too much of a place in your heart, do you feel like that has been a continual journey, or do you feel like that was, no, I came to a crossroads and it was like, I'm past it, it's done, and talk about that.
It's a continual journey for me. Constant.
Yeah.
It's really hard for me to feel out of comfort with that, with not having enough money. And, you know, starting this whole new business is, you know, money's just going out the door all the time. Right. And so it's a continual thing that I think I continually look to God for, of like, please, like let me have the faith here. Like you've shown up, you always show up. Just let me trust in you right now.
Yeah. I think that's a great word. Sometimes God gives us this sense of total deliverance of whatever it is, whatever the challenge is. But there is a reason why Jesus keeps having to say to his own disciples, do not be afraid, do not be afraid, do not be afraid, do not be afraid. And the thing I always encourage people to do is exactly what you're saying, is when you feel fear creeping in, to start telling yourself the truth in those moments.
Right.
Because the fear will take over, and then you'll start making decisions and leading out of a place of fear. And you really do have to take control of your mind, take control of your thinking. Tell yourself the truth as you're doing. He has been faithful. He will be faithful. And it's really cool to see you do that. I know you've taken other kinds of steps in different ways, just financially, that have been continued to be just steps of faith and risk. And it's really cool. When it comes to when you were trying to get momentum with the current business, tell me if I read this correctly. With Elf Factory, partially because that Bass Pro Shop deal, it just felt like, man, you got some pretty traction pretty quickly. Yeah. And so I don't know if you'd say it was an entrepreneur's dream journey, but man, it was pretty awesome.
It was awesome.
Yeah. So when you started, well, I understand it's a different name, but same organization. But when Kids Crafts launched, it was not that same sense of immediate momentum. Or what would you say it was?
I would say it was.
Okay, it was. So Would you say then it just was boom, straight up and
Yes.
right from the jump?
Yes. I would say again, God just like has really just opened doors that shouldn't have been opened. And so like, the concept came in February 2020 when I was down and out with COVID. We launched November 2020 and I was pitching at QVC July of 2021. And so that's really what jump-started everything was being on QVC. And then also I think, and I would say this to any woman that's trying to start a business or wants to be an entrepreneur, is being part of the WeBank certification, which is like the National Women-Owned Business Certification Program, is huge.
How so?
That is what gets you into all of the places like Walmart and Target and Barnes & Noble and those kinds of places, is that it just opens doors because of their supplier and diversity programs. Being a woman-owned small business has benefits that way that you can pitch to people that you normally would have a really, really hard time getting in front of.
How do you even hear about, like how was that connection made?
You know, I was looking at pitching to Disney for our crafts, like the old ones that we used to do with the felt. And when I was looking at their supplier requirements, one of their requirements was being WeBank certified. And I'm like, what is this? And so I looked it up and I was like, oh, so this is the certification. And that's literally how it happened. And so, but I would say, like, I tell anybody that I'm talking to that's a woman is get that certification. Like, it's kind of a hassle in the beginning. You know, they take it very seriously. You have to interview. They have to come out to your house. Everything to verify it. But because they take it so seriously, so do all of those big retailers.
Okay.
And so it's a really nice way to get connected.
And again, you read it, you don't know what it is, you figure out what it is,
Yep.
you take the step.
That's the story of my life.
I just love it because you're super smart and you're super hungry. So those things matter a lot, obviously.
Right.
I mean, those are just internal things that are true about you.
Yeah.
But it's fun because it's not like this brilliant master strategic plan. It's step after step, risk after risk. Learn a new thing.
Yep.
Sometimes fail. Try again.
Yes.
I think that's, and you know what I think, because I don't know if we knew you as well when you were doing Elf Factory. Maybe, I just don't know if we walked with you as closely on the journey.
Right.
So I think my perception of kids crafts is that it took time, but really it's just you continuing to do what you always do.
Yep.
Take the steps. And
Take the steps.
When you're like Disney, you're throwing these like Disney and all these different places. I mean, is it always like I just randomly called up Disney?
Yes,
and they were like,
literally,
oh my gosh.
it is like that. That is what I would say to anybody is like, don't be afraid to just reach out to these people. You know, I LinkedIn people all the time randomly and just say, hey, this is what I do. Let's talk.
Jeez, who are some of the companies that you've got? We've talked about Disney and then distribution at Meijer and these different. What ones? Any that we have not talked about that you've made connections with?
Well, Shark Tank reached out.
Oh my goodness, yeah, that's
Shark
right.
Tank reached out. I don't know. Let's see, Target.com, Barnes & Noble. Yeah, I don't know.
It's really cool.
Yeah.
On the balance. The whole kind of staying healthy and balanced. So you learn this big lesson back when of I can't have two major jobs at the same time. I can't be full-time at one job and run a company on the other. Has the balance question become, now that you're just on your one company, is it like, you know what, now it's not too hard to maintain health and balance, or is that a continual journey? And if so, how do you navigate it?
No, I feel really well. I feel really good in my balance of work life. I would say I don't probably work a 40-hour week right now. It's probably, closer to 30 hours. I just feel so good because I have the opportunity to go to all of the kids' sporting events or like be there to pick them up from school or whatever they need. And so I feel like, and I've made time now, so I don't do anything on the weekends with work. And I have really good life-giving friends. And those friendships, like, are just so important to me. And I love that part of my life.
Yeah, which is a huge part. I mean, for really anybody, all the research says how important it is as far as overall life happiness.
Yeah.
There is such a law of diminishing returns when it comes to happiness that comes from income.
Right.
You get to a certain point, and after that, it really drops off. And what really becomes important is relationships.
Yep.
Life-giving friendships, family, taking care of yourself, those kinds of things. That's really, really cool to hear that after you had that big sort of come to Jesus moment back when, that you're able to, I mean, I the phrase that I heard a long time ago, which is create the kind of life you can love.
Yeah.
And I think about that. Like, what does it look like for our life to be ordered with friendship, with family, with work, and all that I go, yeah, this is it. This is the life.
It's feeling right.
And if it ever feels like it's not, when I go, I don't like how this feels right now, I've really just tried to make this commitment of I'm not going to have a victim mentality right now. I'm going to try to figure out, okay, what can I do to change this and fix it? I mean, it's so cool to think at one point you were doing 65 hours a week. Now you're doing 30. You're still running a successful company.
Right.
And you're able to be present in relationship in all the ways that you would like to. It's really, really cool.
Yeah.
If you were speaking into the life of someone that is just starting out, so I'm asking you to rewind the tape to like the early days. What do you say to, have you gotten that question much from other folks?
Yeah. I would say that like, well, a few things. I would say one, God positions you, but he doesn't take the step for you. And I feel like if you're really leaning into what he's saying, you need to take that step. You need to, because otherwise if he took the step, like, he put you in a place where your faith wasn't there. And so I really feel like listen to where he's positioning you, listen to where you're supposed to be, and take the risk. If it's feeling right and you've prayed a lot about it, don't be afraid of the risk. Yeah.
Let me even, and don't forget all the other good things you're going to say. But on that take the risk point, how, if you had to say what percentage confidence you had this is going to work, I mean, are you taking a risk when you're like, hey, it's 50-50, I don't know? Or are you like, no, 80% I think this is going to work, and 20 that, maybe not? I mean, I think, because what you just said is so important. It is not a certainty when you start out in things. No. You are exercising faith, and that's why it's called faith.
Yes.
But I'm just trying to get a sense for how...
I never feel like it's ever going to be a done deal. Like, it's always feeling about 50-50. Like,
okay, gotcha.
And, even with the new, when we pivoted, it was like, I mean, babe, this is the money. Like, I have to use all this money to start it over. And I don't know. We don't have the research yet on whether this is going to, prove to be a good thing or not. But we just had faith and wanted to do it.
Now that you're saying that, I remember you talking about the size of checks you were writing with no guarantees. And I might be misremembering this, but I feel like you basically said, hey, most of what I have in reserve at this point,
all of it.
All of it.
All of it plus loans.
We're fully leveraging. Uncertain if it's going to prove. I mean, wow. With and now back to the faith thing.
Yes.
With
he's
50-50.
He's never let me down.
He's never let you down. You've prayed about it. You feel like the Lord's calling you to take the step.
Yeah.
And so, boom, here you are. So that's just amazing. Okay. Other advice that comes to mind.
Other advice, I would just say, don't wait to have everything ready until you launch. Like, you can always do a better logo. You can always have better verbiage on your website. You can always have better pictures, but just get something out there. Like, just start, launch it and then redo it and keep reinventing it. And I would say that, you can get so held up in all of the little details that it becomes too overwhelming, and you just got to get out there and do it.
Is there anything that you look back on now and you're like, I'm glad I launched with that, but there's a part of you that's like, I can't believe I launched with that, but I just, you know what I'm saying?
I've had some real bad logos. Like, I mean, I use logos as the example because, like, I personally used a lot of bad ones. Yeah. You just learn as you go, right? And your business will change as you get more into it. I started with the school thing, and we had to pivot to something else that was completely different. And then that business failed because of COVID. And now we're pivoting to a different business. And so your business will have different iterations. Yeah. And so don't wait until it's all just perfect before you start it.
Oh, that's such good advice. I always like to tell people you can't steer a parked car.
No.
Speaking of where I got that from, that's a Mike Morin special, actually.
I like it.
And you would not believe, it's actually come up on Made to Advance before, but I've brought that up. But how many times in my life I have said that to myself,
yeah,
and then to as a pastor, because people will get so paralyzed by either A, I have to hear from God in such a way, they need it so clear that it's like, man, if God spoke to you with the clarity that you're looking for, back to your point, you wouldn't even need faith at that point because it was that clear. So either A, they're sitting there waiting for that level of faith, or B, they're waiting for everything to be so picture perfect when it comes to how they launched. Again, to your point, the logo's perfect, the website's perfect, socials, the this, that, and then they get stuck and nothing ever happens. Right. So I just think it's such a good word. Like, hey, just get going on something, and you got to discern, of course, when you're at. I mean, there's still probably a threshold that you got to get
100%. 100%. Like, you got to be smart about it, right? Yeah. But if you look at every task that it takes to start a business, it's daunting, and you can get paralyzed, and like there's just too much to start it. But then there's a flip side to just start. Yeah. Just take the risk if it's feeling right, if God's calling you to do it, and see where it goes.
Have you had to apply that thinking to anything outside of business, would you say? Where it's just I just need to go for it. I don't
think so. No? I would say, we're always trusting God, right? Like, Jackson just moved to college. Yeah. And I'm like, oh God, please. Yeah. He's in Chicago. Please be safe. Please watch over him. And so I think there's faith in those kind of situations and familial things, but nothing, no. Yeah.
One time you were hosting with Christina at church, and when we used to do a little bit of a before our Sunday stream, you got up there, and I thought, this is cool. She's still going after it. Never done it before, but you're just getting after it. Anything else you shared with people when it comes to, you talk about taking the risk? Wait till everything's perfect. Anything else that you end up telling folks who are just considering the beginning of the journey?
Just be scrappy.
Yeah.
Just be scrappy and get in there. And, there's a zillion tools out there. YouTube's like a free masterclass, and you can always find something if you have a question about something, and if you're trying to bootstrap it, use those free resources because they really do help. And
that's a great word. I was talking to somebody the other day who really is doing well in their career, and he got his MBA from Michigan. And if you know anything about MBA programs, that's one of the best in the country. It's a great school. And I said, oh yeah, how did that degree? Because sometimes we'll talk with our kids about master's degrees, things like that. And I said, how did what you learned at Michigan affect your business or affect your leadership? And he said, and I don't want to make a Michigan MBA sound bad because it's still an incredible degree, but he said most, if not all, of what they taught, I could have learned online.
Right.
Now, what he did say is the relationships were unbelievable. He's like, the connections
name,
I made, all that. Yeah, the name helps. You got on your resume. So just to be clear for all the listening audience here, I'm not down on getting an MBA from Michigan, but I think to your point,
there's a lot of knowledge out there that's free.
Yes. And you just got to get after it, be scrappy, learn, study, and you keep putting yourself in these groups. Even the cohort.
And ChatGPT is so good these days. It is. You can make a logo off of ChatGPT. Yeah. Do that. Start your logo that way.
I think your next company is going to be advertising for ChatGPT's features because you have leveraged yourself.
I do love the AI ChatGPT.
Yeah. I don't know if I'll need to do an interview with you 10 years from now because I'll just be
send my AI version.
Exactly. I'll have a hologram and say, ChatGPT, give me a Kirsten Field to sit by me, and we'll have this huge conversation. It'll be great. So, well, Kirsten, thanks so much for hanging out today, and thanks for sharing your heart. It really is such a privilege. You are such an authentic, humble person, and people would hear your journey and think, man, what a baller. She's done all of these incredible things. She's leading these companies and all that. But what is so cool knowing you is you're so real, you're so humble. You're so authentic. You care deeply about people. Here you are, one, having businesses that are flourishing, also businesses like every business that goes through challenges and you're, oh my goodness, what am I going to do moments. And even in the midst of those, I've seen over and over and over again how you have decided to prioritize other people's lives, to care for not just your family, but to care for people in our community. And that's just how you do life. You never come off pretentious. You never come off, oh my, look at, I'm like the big deal, and with all of these different things you've done. And if anything, and the funny thing is when you talk about like your struggles and limitations and all that, what's great is like you're really smart, but you're not trying to undersell it. You like intentionally, you're not managing like let me put the humble picture of Kirsten out. You're just you, where you're like, God's given me some skills, but he's given me a whole lot of favor, and I keep working hard, and he keeps opening doors, and you're so quick to give him credit. And I love that. I think it's such a great example, and I hope your business just continues to flourish. Thanks for being on Made to Advance.
Thanks.
Well, that conversation with Kirsten went as well as I thought it would. She has so many great things to share, and I really hope you keyed in on, I mentioned it several times, but one of the great themes of Kirsten's life has been, I'm going to listen to God, I'm going to pray, and then as I sense peace and clarity about a step forward, even if I can't say, oh, this absolutely will work, I'm going to move forward in faith. And I just love that example. I've often said in my ministry, and I'm trying to write a book on this right now, that greater faith is the catalyst to greater things. And I look at Kirsten's life, she has exercised faith again and again and again. And because of that, she has all kinds of stories of how God has shown up in her life and in her business. So I really do hope this was an encouraging conversation to you, and it does so much help for us if you would be willing to rate and review Made to Advance. This has been a production of Engedi Church. We've got more incredible conversations on the way that are going to inspire you, that are going to encourage you, and they're going to equip you. So please stay tuned, and we'll see you next time. You were made to advance.